bring this event together to first off relay how important the space economy is and how advanced it actually already is, but even more importantly, how the collision of Web3 and space is going to represent one of the largest opportunities and benefits in mankind's history. And I don't only mean that when it comes to wealth generation and the economic opportunity. I also mean that when it comes, if you advance these entrepreneurs and these companies in the space economy, Andy brought up one example. To me, the greatest example actually Ukraine brought was how satellite data and imagery can totally change the playing field in what is happening in the world. And this extends not just to us as human beings, but if you're into the animal world or the environmental world, we are actively working on cases around that ourselves. And it's going to totally change how the world functions in a beneficial manner to every living creature on Earth. Just so you know, we brought together two of our partners as well with you guys today. So if you haven't met or talked to the Space Chain or Kudos people, please do. These are entities that we're actively working with on our main goal, which is to actually give every single one of you access, ownership, and the benefits of the space economy. Our story, though, starts 3 generations ago. This is very important for me to relay to you guys. So actually, let's say the seed for this idea of democratizing access and ownership in space was started by my grandfather. My grandfather helped build the space program in Poland, but was a very progressive, capitalistic kind of minded guy who was stuck in the geopolitical, let's say, realities of where he was. So talking about democratizing access to space was a legitimate thing for him. It's not marketing speak, right? And this is obviously continued not just through myself, but also through my mother, who's a co-founder of this company. And about 6 years ago, we realized, this is going to be the largest and most important market, once again, not just economically, but benefits here on Earth, but it does not have a place for these companies, these entrepreneurs, to meet with the commercial market, the retail market, people such as yourself, and there's various reasons for it. And the thing is that space never had the chance to enter into the digital economy, and we're going to show you how we're bringing the economic and financial infrastructure for the space economy using this technology. All right, so our whole thing is democratizing ownership in space. Right? I understand that sounds abstract right now to most of you, but in reality, this is something that we are making accessible this year and the following years, not just in economic sense, but also in utility. Accessibility of actual features, benefits, and functions of the space economy. We're not an NFT project. I want to make this very clear, okay? What we actually represent is don't look at how, when we use the term NFTs, don't look at it how people have viewed it or it's been applied up until today. View it as a technology that we are applying and is going to be a backbone for a lot of digital markets and economies in the future. It is a vehicle with certain features, benefits, and functions for actual assets. Whether those assets are physical, whether those assets are data-oriented. And we're going to show you a few cases. And even, our partners here that we work with are working with us on those cases. So once again, NFTs are not what you think it is when it comes to this project. It has real function. But we do some fun stuff with them, which I'll show you later. Which is the keys to the space economy. A lot of people don't get the space economy. First off, space economy is already $500 billion. Conservative projections are it's $1 trillion by the end of this decade, okay? The other thing people don't realize is that there's an actual commercial private market for it, right? There's over 100,000 companies at this point that want to access the space market in some kind, and there's loads of pressure from the investment end, right? What's the issue? It's accessibility and affordability. It's just not, quote-unquote, democratized enough. Which leads to space doesn't have a digital market. So space was not mature enough as a market private market to enter Web or Web 2.0 realities. And it's perfectly built for Web 3, right? You need to have that custodial ownership. You're dealing with sensitive assets. You're dealing with sensitive data. Pretty much you need a peer-to-peer network when it comes to that works in very secure manners. Whether you're talking about owning payload, or you're talking about satellite data, whatever it may be, right? And this is a booming industry that's never entered the digital economy, right? So you guys gotta understand, business processes in space are archaic as hell. These are real stories where people actually upload data into physical hard drives, get a guy to get on a plane with them, fly them to the other end of the U.S., and then hand them to their space company partner. That's a real thing that's happening in space. If you want to do something in space today, you have to manually discover it, get on the phone with all these guys, and go through about a year contracting period, usually a contract that's over $1 million. That whole process eliminates 99 whatever point percentage of the commercial market today and how they access services, products, assets, let alone view things from an investment or tradability end. And once again, there's loads of pressure for this, both as investors and both as companies, right? At the end of the day, there's no place to discover what space companies are doing, discover the space assets as we call them, which I'll get into what space assets are, let alone the capability to transact with them. Once again, I gave you the transaction period, 1 year contracting, multi-million-dollar contracts. There's no scalable transactions, and there's no secondary market to the space economy, right? Which is a big effect, both commercially as well as investments, right? You can take a look at crypto, what's been running NFTs. Really, if you're a good NFT project long-term, or you're a good NFT-related asset long-term, you probably generate more money on the secondary market than you actually do in your primary sale. And even conservative behemoths like Morgan Stanley understand that space is such a unique opportunity and market that it needs its own, what we call, economic operating system. Kevin is a former director of space commerce at the U.S. Department of Commerce. He's on our team as an advisor, and I asked him after 30 minutes of meeting with me in D.C. why he joined the team. And he gave me a bunch of great quotes. I'm only using one of them. But that comes back to that accessibility and affordability. If you want to send something into space right now, boy, you better have money, patience, and the lawyers. If you want to invest in space right now, other than one project, you have to have privileged access. If you want to invest in SpaceX, you better know a SpaceX investor, a PayPal mafia guy, or something like that. That's generally been the rule around that. So the point is that if you apply Web3 tech and NFTs, for example, in the proper way, and certain things like fractionalization, you can quite literally break down ownership in space into something that's potentially affordable for everybody in this room. And this is this historic opportunity in history. I mentioned this is probably going to be the most important market in history. We don't want it to go in the direction that we've seen other markets go and kind of form. And these are one of these promises of Web3 tech and how to apply it in a proper sort of manner. So our whole thing is to actually democratize the access to fuel these great entrepreneurs to create more assets and more products and more solutions that you can use or you can invest in. So what are we at the end of the day? We use this tech to create a platform that's mainly built around a marketplace for both space assets that space ventures generate, as well as investments into those space ventures or the assets that they're creating. How does that work? Digitize, in our case, tokenize the business processes of space. As I told you, the business processes of space are archaic. That's worth billions of dollars by itself. But what are we doing? We're taking these products and services, and we're using actually NFTs in this case, to turn them into real assets that if the asset creator wants, have a secondary market, but also true utility, right? And I'll get into these utility cases. And when I'm talking about utility, I don't mean, come see me at our event like this, and that's the utility of the asset. So access, utilize, and trade space assets and investments. Democratize how people access it, how they move their capital through it, and how they can trade these assets that they acquire. Right? So it's very easy actually on our platform. I'm going to leave this presentation up later on my computer. If you guys want to click and play around with stuff, you can. But we provide a simple to use interface and marketplace where space companies can tokenize their assets. So this is, for example, satellite data. Right? This is physical payload going to the moon. This is what we call digital payload going to the International Space Station. Or they can tokenize their equity, and I'll get into how we're going to be doing that later. or create entirely new financing models for the creation of space assets. So like, instead of going to a VC and let's say trying to raise 10 million to create their next satellite, let's say they have a track record. Why don't I tokenize ownership in that satellite we're going to create and tie rights to future revenue that satellite generates to the tokens and put that on the public market? Meaning that people can acquire fractional ownership in the space asset itself and reap the financial benefits of its success and have a secondary market attached to it that if they want to trade it, they can trade it to somebody else. And also, ease of use. I've been in this space for a long time. I'm going to get into my history more. Ease of use for the commercial market and the average user to access these assets, transact them, and trade them. So very soon we're going to have card integrations, right? We're working with certain protocols and providers to where we can provide custodial aspects. So creating a wallet in the traditional Web3 sense is not something that space companies or commercial companies have to do. And this is an important bridge that I think a lot of people forget around their products in this space. But the other thing is that utilization, which is great. Like I brought the satellite data thing up. So if you want to get satellite data, multi-million-dollar usually contract. But what if you need 10 photos? What if you're a farmer in Asia and Africa and you need 10 types of satellite imagery photos of your land to, let's say, take a look at how water is working around your crops? Why can't I come, discover a company that offers that in a marketplace, request the data that I want, they package that in the data set on AWS or on Kudos or different types of data hosting platforms. They embed the direct access to that data set through the NFT as a license and sell you that NFT. So I have peer-to-peer secure access to a data set under a license. And what if I only used 5 of them? Maybe I could trade that on to somebody else if the original asset creator allows that. True utility is an actual thing in this Web3 world. It's just it takes time sometimes to projects like us and many others to do that, to provide that to the market. And how we're doing that in the beginning. I told you, commercialization, financing. SpaceSmart is commercialization. Look at it as the eBay, the Amazon of space, except it's tokenized and it provides true utility and tradability. So we already have a bunch of commercial cases that we're working on with some really, really great space companies. But this is this place where they can tokenize, and here's the word, fractionalize access and ownership. So let's say I have physical payload going to the moon. Let me sell 1 gram of it. That's an asset. You have actual ownership of something that is related to a physical asset that's on the moon. If you're in crypto, the majority of the scarcity you're actually buying is made up. It doesn't exist. It's a bunch of guys writing code. In these cases, we're talking about actual worth and actual scarcity, right? There's, let's say, 3 kilos. That's a scarce asset and resource with the utility attached to it that you can trade. And launch case, I talked about the moon. We're like the crypto project where to the moon is like a literal thing. So what you're going to see in Q4 this year is the capability for you to access and buy ownership to upload your digital assets, your music, files, software onto the moon. It will either be a lander or a rover or both. I'll announce that soon. Obviously, you can join waitlists for all these sort of sales and assets that are going to be offered. But remember, we're a Web3 marketplace, so we're non-custodial, non-intermediary around assets and funds, which is really important in space. But we do control entry points. We make sure the quality of the assets are legit, so we're building a whole process on how to verify these commercial companies, space companies being able to offer it, and then also controlling the other end, which is, for example, U.S. space companies can't sell to Chinese nationals. How do you control that in a tokenized environment? On the primary sale, okay, you can control that pretty easily. But how do you control that on secondary market? So we've already built in these sort of features into the platform to make sure that these space companies can do things according to their regulations. And let's say the not right type of person gets their hands and access to these assets and to these data. And I'll get in my history again. I have a background in being able to understand this. So one of the people you see on these upcoming sales that we're working on is our partner here, Space Chain, which is, I'm going to let them get into it and their infrastructure, but they've already made history and done really crazy stuff when it comes to this integration of crypto and the space world. We love satellite data. We think that's going to change the world in amazing ways. So us being able to streamline, democratize access and ownership in it is going to be a game changer, and we love that. So we're working with loads of companies around this case and bringing it to market. But you can't just grab space all at once. It's too big, okay? There's too much going on. And each one of these verticals kind of has their own standard. Like, you can't sell a car the same way you sell a boat. Like, they're two different things, right? They have different processes. So we focus in our first 3 years on teaming up with great space companies, creating a valid commercial case that we feel represents a standard for a vertical in the market. You kill that standard, you execute it well, show that you can generate revenue with it, show that it works, and then you can onboard more and more companies under that standard. And this has already happened for us, where we built a proof of concept for physical payload to the moon, and now we're able to talk and onboard bigger, and in some cases better companies that are doing physical payload and digital payload aspects. And we're about to get into financing and liquidity, which I know is really exciting for a lot of you because you're crypto people. Most of you, I think, from what I can tell. So space pool. I mentioned commercialization, space assets, financing space assets. This is where the average person really can get into ROI. The reason we're doing space pool later is because we have to jump through certain regulatory hurdles to be able to do that. We will be offering securities. Most of these crypto projects in reality are actually offering securities, no matter how they want to spin it. The reason why you can take a look at the space mart with the space assets and say they're not securities is because there's actual utility and access attached to them. So you can't say that it's exclusively a buy based off the expectation of return on investment. But with Space Pool, we do have to do that. So this is once again where space companies can tokenize their shares, create utility tokens that have certain features in their ecosystem, or create these entirely new financing models like I mentioned earlier around fractionalizing ownership, tying it to revenue, and putting that in the public market. Business model is straightforward. We earn off every single transaction, primary, secondary. But I brought some people from my past experience to help me build space data market access APIs. It's something we're doing in the background. Space market data sucks. There's some space market people here, and it's very backwards when it comes to that. So we saw kind of an opportunity to be able to offer that also to the market. But generally at the end of the day, we work like an OpenSea works. I mean, to really dumb it down, you can look at us like an OpenSea for space, except we're dealing with real assets, and we're attaching real utility and more features and functions like fractionalization, etc. Roadmap. Big important thing is that next quarter we're launching the first true space asset sales. That's our goal. And we're also going to be developing further cases with some of our partners here. So where are we today? Product works. You want to go test it, have fun. We even built a sandbox environment for you to be able to play with it at no cost, no fees, etc. We got this deal flow with companies coming. We're building this community, right, of space asset buyers, which is a new community, and there's a very interesting intersection between crypto and space, actually. We've raised a round before from 3 great VCs, 2 great angels who are former Yahoo execs, and we're actually in our seed round, so our second round right now. Myself, real quick around my history, this isn't my first rodeo, so I'm not some crazy guy up here trying to abstractly shove crypto into space. I've been in the crypto space since 2013. As I mentioned, I'm third generation aerospace. And I built companies like Coinfirm, which is one of the leaders around analytics and AML for crypto. It's actually headquartered right here in London. And I was also CMO of it for about 4 or 5 years. So building a brand, building a product, putting it into the market, a very progressive and challenging product initially. When we started Coinfirm in 2015, you said AML and analytics. AML analytics for crypto, you're crazy, right? So this position isn't like unique for me, But at the end of the day, I'm fulfilling my family legacy, and I think one of the most important opportunities and missions, not just in my life, but any life that could have ever existed. My mother is my co-founder. She is a recognized kind of person and personality in the space economy known as Lady Rocket, but she's the Silicon Valley OG, more visionary and eccentric than I am. She brought the American computer industry into Central and Eastern Europe after communism fell. She's originally Polish. That's the Polish connection that Andy brought up earlier. And it's filled out by Philip, who's our CTO right now, who's worked with me for 5 years. He worked at Coinfirm before. He's made history in building products in the blockchain market, and he's making history right now again. And the reason we brought on Brian, because the big value we're bringing to space is that we are connecting space companies with that commercial market. So a big thing that him and I and a few other team members focus on is attracting brands, tech companies, gaming companies, etc., to enter into the space economy by providing them more accessible, more affordable, and also the capability to create their own unique space assets. So for example, if I send something to the moon, I buy it off Copernic Space. I go through a process with the space company through the platform, share agreements if they have to, etc. Let's say the space company verifies it, that mints an NFT, takes it away from the supply of the physical space, and gives it to the buyer. You know what that buyer can do now? It can transform that NFT to represent their actual cargo that they're putting in to go to the moon, or a service it represents, and fractionalize and resell it. So not only are we connecting space with the commercial and private market, but we're enabling the commercial market to generate their own unique space assets out of it, create multiples of them, and sell them into the commercial market through our platform and marketplace. Here's the thing. Most advisory boards are faces, especially if you're in a Web3 space. We have great people. I mentioned Kevin before. I'm going to try to wrap this up, obviously. But we also have great investors on our advisory board and people that actually fulfill real functions. They're not just faces for us. Some people we work with are in this room. We're partnering with great entities both in Web3 as well as space. Obviously, Kudos is right here. Polygon's another one. We are based on Polygon right now because it enables certain features and functions like fractionalization at a much more effective rate than let's say, ETH and Mainnet. But we're blockchain agnostic. So we're actually working with different protocols on integrating them into the platform because we want to offer users the choice. We're not here to dictate the market. We're here to facilitate and provide an infrastructure for the market. And if you want, you can go on NASA and see what we were like 2 years ago, really, really early on as a project because they host us there. How you can get involved right now. The other week we launched Spaceables. So we've invested into space art. We did the first, for years, we did the first ever physical NFT space art exhibition in Palm Beach. And eventually space companies, organizations, creators, artists, etc. came to us. They're like, hey, we heard what you're doing. Why don't you do this? And we're like, well, we're planning on doing it, but since now you want us to do it faster, let's do it. So we launched the other week actually something called Spaceables, which is a combination of space and collectibles. But it's for a lot more. We're going to be putting digital fashion on there, fidgetals, etc. So we launched that this past week. People are minting and listing really cool, interesting stuff. Some people are buying it. So you have QR codes around there on the screens. You can go to Spaceables and start checking space work out. Or if you're into space and you have something you want to put up, let me know. I'll even send you some crypto so you can mint it and list it for free on Copernic Space. And last, this is something we're exploring for our community, which I work with some really cool companies that have built platforms that have actual function and utility and provide certain benefits to access it. So one thing we are going to be coming out with in this next quarter is, let's say, your key to our platform that provides you certain features and benefits. So really there's 4 ways right now you can get involved with us. Outside of just general community and being an ambassador, it's A, go on Spaceables, buy some Spaceables works, mint and list your Spaceables on there, sign up for our waiting list for lunar payload so you can have access to the moon before everybody else does. And also, you can talk to us about the NFTs or our investment round if you're a fund. But we also have an ambassador program, so if you're passionate about space and passionate about what we're doing, then please talk to me. We're happy to bring you on. I bring on new ones almost every week. So I once again want to thank everybody here. I love that we're doing this in London. We're going to be back in November doing it even bigger because we're speaking at NFT.London. I'm going to be bringing even more space partners who are also in the Web3 space with me. I know it's a lot at first and it seems abstract, but this is a reality that's actually coming to you within the next years to be able to have real access and not have to be a multimillionaire, billionaire to have this access and ownership into this economy that's actually going to be the most important one in probably your lifetime. And the great thing about it is that this technology, not token this, token that. A lot of people say, why don't you have a token? You would raise millions of dollars a lot easier. That's a whole different discussion. It's about creating an actual economic infrastructure for space that utilizes this technology. So to a point in a couple years, you're going to be buying and using space assets and the word NFT is not going to matter. And that's the honest truth of how the majority of this market is going to develop. And I hope that you guys see the opportunity in not just the space market, but in what we're building. And I want to thank you, our hosts, our guests, Space Chain, Kudos, Disruption Banking, and of course the DLT Lounge. So thank you everyone for being here. More great presentations coming and of course drinks and time to talk afterwards. Thank you.